Hello, SAFHER community. Welcome to another in a series of demonstrations regarding SAFHER. Today, we're going to cover product registration. Within this product registration process, you'll see in the prerequisites here, there are many prerequisite configurations that we have to accomplish. I'm going to focus on two: program type and entity type. The others you've likely seen in other demonstrations, so we're not going to configure those today. We're also going to cover the internal and external console for creating a product and an application, and the application approval process. So here we are. I am signed in as an administrator on the admin console. And you can see over here our standard menu on the admin console, but we're going to jump down, like I said, to just a couple of key items here. So we're going to set up the program type. And specifically, this program type is the actual product registration. So as before, you see up top our standard items for sorting and filtering and our add new button. So by adding new, you would start this process of adding this new program type. But I've already got one accomplished here, and we'll walk through how I configured that. So I'm going to use this feed and pet food registration test here. So if we come over here to the edit icon, you'll see all of the steps that we go through to set this up. As usual, this top section is just the base configuration of naming it and giving it a description, but we also have to associate it with the program group type. In this case, LA Animal Food, and we're associating it with the entity group type of product because this is a product registration. And the classification type is a product registration, but you do have options there. So you can configure certificates, certifications, licenses, permits, registrations, and product registration. And then associate with a revenue code type that you have already configured in the admin console. In this case, I used the animal food product registration fee. And then we associate operation types. And this is also set up as you configure other things in the admin console. For this, I just created guarantor and manufacturer, and I'm just identifying that this is a guarantor. And then you configure the days until due once the notice went out. And then you associate these other documents, the official documents, if you want to use it, the delinquent notice, if you're going to do a delinquent notices when registrations are late, and as well as the expired when your registrations go expired. You can configure those in the admin console too under your document templates. And then you identify whether this registration requires payment, whether you want to generate that official document that you've associated over here, or generate those compliance actions that you've done over there as well. And then you associate this product registration to a renewal notice email as well. And so that's done here. And that as well is set up in the admin console in one of those other configurations. And then you identify whether this product registration requires approval and whether the payment is after or before the approval. And then you configure the attachments that you require. So by selecting add new, I can add other attachments that I would like to see and identify whether or not they're required or not. But we're not going to do that right now because I have these two set up. I want a product label and an ingredient listing. And then lastly, you come down here and you set your expiration schedule on these product registrations. So it's either a fixed expiration date or a dynamic expiration date. In this case, I set it up for expiring on June 30th of every year. And the renewal period opens the 60 days prior to that. There's no grace period, so that once the renewal happens, the payment is due. And if I were to try to register a product within 60 days of the typical expiration date, it would automatically kick me into the next cycle instead of making me pay for a month, like maybe May, and then immediately have to renew it a month later and pay for another year. So this is configurable here. And then there's this capability to enable an expiration date override, where an admin could override and extend that expiration date for extenuating circumstances on a case-by-case basis. And so that's completely a decision to set up here in the admin console. So that's how we set up an program type for product registration. The next thing that we're going to do is look at entity types, and we're going to configure the entity type for a product or animal food. Just like before, you would select add new, and then you would be able to begin this process. But we're going to go over here to the edit screen. And as you can see here, we name it and give it a description. It is associated with the entity group type of product, and we make it active. And then we have the product options. So we associate it with a program group type, which was already done, and then identify whether registration is required for this product type. And then we get to configure some of these standard fields for weight choices, species choices, composition choices. And so you can identify whether or not to include those choices in the product when somebody creates a new product. And you can do that here and then configure your actual choices that you need to do for the products in your state or agency. Same with species. So you can do species, livestock feed, pet food, specialty pet food, etc. But very similar, just give it a name and a description and make it active or not active. So this gives you quite a broad flexibility on how you set this up. And then composition choices, product composition choices here. We've got complete, supplement, treat, etc. But you can configure anything you want here, however you define composition. So that is the base level of configuring the entity. Now, on both entity and on the program management, where we set up the product registration, you have the ellipses over here on the right. When these ellipses show up, that means that you have additional reference data that you can configure. In this case, for this entity type of an animal food product, I configured some choices for a container type. So you can do that here, but let me X out of here and I will show you how that was configured. So I selected that I wanted to do a container type, and I configured dry, canned, pouch, other in this instance, but it's pretty simple to do. Once again, in other configurations, you select the add new button, you label it, give it a description, and then you select the type of field that you want here, whether it's a text or number field, whether it's a radio button or a drop down. And then depending on which you select, it gives you the option then to configure those responses, either in the what fields you want in the drop down fields or what options you want on the radio buttons, etc. Pretty straightforward. So that is both the product registration under program management, under program types, and the entity type of product for this animal food product that we configured. So we will move on to the internal console, where I would be signed in either as a clerk or supervisor, etc. And we can actually go in then and create a product. Say somebody's called me on the phone or mailed me a product registration form, and I need to add a product into the system so that it can be registered. So we would do that here under entities and products. I'm going to go ahead and create a product, and I'm going to select LA Animal Food because that is the type of product that we configured in the admin console. And I'm going to select that this is an existing responsible party, but you can also create a new responsible party if you'd like. I'm going to select an existing one. And so we've got that done here. We just selected one from our list that we knew was responsible for this. And we're going to create a brand and name the product. Product ID, if I had one. The product weight. These are the weights that we configured in the admin console. I'm going to say it's less than 10 pounds, or 10 pounds and below. And this is a pet food. And the product composition is a treat. Notice those are the fields that we configured in the admin console. And then I upload a label. And so I have a test label here. I'll just upload here. Once that's done, we move to the next screen, and we have to identify a contact for this. And so I can add contact, either a new one or add an existing one. I'm going to select an existing one. And so we're going to select that individual and add. And then remember that when you have a contact, you have to have one as the primary contact for any entity. So we're going to do that and select next. And here's that additional information that we configured in the admin console. So I'm just going to say this is a pouch because these treats come in a pouch. And then I go to the review step and I can review all the information about this product that we just configured. I have the ability to download and look at that label as well. And then I'm going to submit it. So this will populate up here. If I refresh here, it takes a moment to hit the database, but it is pretty quick. There we go. Here's my doggy treat. So if I go into that product now and go into programs, I can create a program application. And remember that program application is the product registration that we just configured in the admin console. So here's my product registration and select next. And here's reviewing all of the entity information, the responsible party, the product information that we just entered. There's Jacob's feed, it's 10 pounds and less. There's my label, all the stuff that we configured. There's my contacts and my container type. And if we move forward, I have to have a contact for this product registration. It's going to default populate this list with the contact for that product. And then I have the label here already from that product. I can add any additional attachments here. I did configure a product label and an ingredient list here, and they are required. So I'll just drop a couple of attachments in here. So if you're good with obviously the label, the product label in the product entity, then you don't need to require a label here on the product registration. It just depends on where you want to look at that. And anyway, so we've done that. So we'll move on to the additional information. So in this particular case, I created some additional information around label guarantees or feed composition. And so I was just working with this, but this is an example of some of the things that you can do for additional information. So you can require label guarantees here to be entered for product registration or any other data that you configure from that additional reference data during the creation of this particular registration. So we've entered those. I didn't make any of them required, so we're just going to move through this to the review. And then I can review this, everything that's been entered on this, and then hit submit. And then this product registration, as we had configured it, requires payment before approval. So I have to go ahead and pay for it. If I was on the external side, I'd have the option to pay for this in whatever payment method the agency that I'm registering with accepts. In this case, being internal, I'm probably going to have cash or check or money order or something like that come in. I'm just going to say cash just so that we move through this process and we show that it was paid. And then you get a review of the payment and you can see all of that information. You'll notice here's the revenue code that we configured for this product registration in the admin console. And now that product is sitting here as a pending application. It's pending approval. So from here, as the reviewer internal, I can open this and look at all the information here and move through this. I can confirm the details of it. I can see that it was paid. Any attachments additional to what's in the application or product itself could be added there. And then once that's done, I can back up here and hit this review application. Once I've confirmed that all this is correct, I can actually go into the details of the pet food entity of product here and do all that as well. Over here, review all the information, anything that was in that product. But we're going to come back here and go ahead and review this application. And since I've looked at everything and I can either approve it or reject it. If I reject it, I'd be required to put a rejection reason. the applicant would get a notice of the reason of rejection and be able to make any changes or improvements on their application and resubmit it. In this case, I'm going to hit approve, and that product registration will become active in the system. And there we have it. That is product registration in a nutshell from an internal perspective. So that is product registration. Hopefully that meets your needs, but you know how to get a hold of us. So please, I hope you enjoyed this demo, and I look forward to sharing another demo with you in the next week or two. Thank you.